I'm WG, and Chizuru arrived in CZN, bringing with her not only one of the, if not the most beautiful lobby screen in the game, but also a whole plethora of game modes, updates, resources and rewards. And this video specifically will be focused about everything you need to know about Chizuru, from how to play her, to how to gear her, to how to build her, to how I rate her, and everything like that. So let's get into it. Nothing beats seeing it visual, so we'll be going together through this virtual simulation while I explain to you exactly how Chizuru works, because there is some things that can be slightly confusing. So this is here the baseline, and that also, isn't it interesting, they call her a synergy DPS. So what you do is you apply a debuff, and then you gain stacks, and then you bind. It's not really helpful in what this is, but what can be helpful is to further provide explanations to the gameplay so you're about to see. So the base is that you have two cards that have inspiration in Bound at Dusk and Karmic Flames. Your step one pretty much always is going to revolve around playing out your Karmic Flames to apply Chizuru's most important debuff, and that is called the Cursed Jackets. So the way the Cursed Jackets work is whenever the target that has Cursed Jackets active is getting hit by any attack card, so long it is not the Shadow of the Moon card from Chizuru, because that card is considered a bind card, you gain 1 Will-O-Wisp. The important part here is you can take advantage by either hitting the target multiple times with only attack cards, because those are the only ones you count, or hitting the target multiple times with the same attack card, again also leading to an increase in her unique meter. Now her unique meter is this, what you see right here at the very tippity top. You see these 5 flames. These 5 flames are what is called the Will-O-Wisp. So you fill up these Will-O-Wisp by fulfilling either the action of attacking this boss and then gaining Will-O-Wisp as a reward, or looking at the Tsukuyomi, which also further gives you Will-O-Wisp. The shenanigan here is that if you get 5 Will-O-Wisp, it transforms into a bind card. So let's get ourselves 5 Will-O-Wisp and see exactly how it looks. So we are now going to increase the Will-O-Wisp amount gained by 2 per hit of the next attack card. So if we play this out and we have ourselves a 1-hitter, then we're going to get 1 hit from the card itself, giving us 1 Will-O-Wisp through the debuff Cursed Jackets, and then 2 more from the card we just played, leading to us having 3 of these debuff stacks. Then we also have ourselves the Bound at Dusk. So before we move into the next turn, let's explain this card. This is very important. So you play this card out and it's unique, you cannot clone it, and the way it works is the moment you play this card, you will be unable to gain AP from any sources outside of breaking a target. Meaning that whenever you start your next turn, you're only going to get 3 AP, and any 3 AP Divine Epiphanies, any plus Divine Epiphany APs, any AP gained through, for example, Raise Ego Skill, it all doesn't work anymore. But in exchange, what you gain is, for example, at the base version, the ability to decrease the cost of 1 random combatant card by 1 until used. Meaning that if you look at it objectively, in your next turn, you will have 4 AP available. Your 3 base AP and the 1 AP you save yourself on the cost of the other combatant. So here we play out our Bound at Dusk. We end our turn and we move over into the next turn. So now once again we have the debuff active, and we have 3 stacks. So what we can do here is we can activate Karmic Flames. Karmic Flames has again the second effect called Cursed Jackets. That means so long as the target has Cursed Jackets, this effect also triggers. So right here, our expected return, due to it being a 2-hitting attack card and not a bind card, is we're going to fill up the meter. And the moment we do so, we fill up our meter, we get ourselves the Shadow of the Moon card. So the Shadow of the Moon card has bind 1. What that means is this card gains plus 20% damage per bind. So bind 1 is 70%, bind 2 would be 90%. And if you make it to bind 3, this card transforms into Shadow of the Moon plus, gaining an additional hit while still retaining the increased damage per bind stack modifier. So the way we're going to be doing this here is we play out our Tsukuyomi, which gives us 2 per hit for our next few hits. So as you can see right here, Tsukuyomi, so our next hits from our next attack card are going to give us 2, meaning that these 3 are going to give us 6. And then because we also have the debuff active, we're actually going to get an additional 3 because it's 3 hits against the target. So like 2 hits plus 1, giving us 9. So what we do here is then we do our hits and you'll see we go up to 4. And then we also saw this animation. So what happened here is we went to 5 stacks and we created a bind card. This bind card then stacked into the other bind card. The bind cards always stack with each other. The moment you have a bind card in hand, you cannot have multiple in hand. They always stack into each other, meaning that this card is now a bind 2. So a bind 2 is then now currently the attack card, and now we can use the Moon Slash to further attack the boss. So as you can see, we still gain the AP from breaking the boss, and we also gain another card. So as you can see, the meter again went from 4 to 5, and now we are on Shadow of the Moon Plus, which is the bind 3, and also with the unique attribute. So we can then play out our Shadow of the Moon Plus, which is now a 3-hitter, that also recovers HP while still having the bonus 20% damage per bind. Furthermore, this card itself can only stack up to +5. The moment you're at +5, that is when you must play out the card, otherwise all your other bind cards are going to get wasted. But what I like to do in more specific scenarios is I like to always play it the moment we hit Shadow of the Moon Plus. So when we make the transition from Shadow of the Moon to Shadow of the Moon Plus, from bind 2 to bind 3. So that is Chizuru's kit at its baseline. So now you should hopefully understand exactly how she works. And the important part here is the debuff is not limited to Chizuru's cards. The debuff can work on any cards. So now let's see if we can speedrun this a little faster. So we activate the debuff again. We also buff our next attack card of this unit used. So we play out like our Bound of Dusk. We get ourselves our Sheath Daggers. So what you now should pay attention to is again pay attention to the resource meter. And now we're going to be hitting once with the Shadow Dagger and we get 1 stack of the resource. So with 3 Shadow Daggers we've already gained ourselves 3 resources. And then can play the Tsukuyomi to again boost the resources generation of the next hit. So for example here we can use the Oni Hunt, which is again the 3 hits for the debuff and then the 2 per hit, meaning that this is again going to be 9, giving us our upgrade into the Shadow of Moon already twice, as you can see. So we instantly went up from our Shadow of Moon into Shadow of the Moon Plus. Can use it here to get the extra damage with the triple hitter, and then again hit the target with, for example, an additional 3. And as you see, we then again move through it, and we also have the retain effect, meaning we can just keep this card in hand and just go into our next turn, working towards that next Shadow of the Moon. So Shadow of the Moon, then again, same scenario, same game plan. We start with the Predator's Blade, we get 1 stack. We use the Oni Hunt, we get an additional 3. We can use the Advanced Healing Daggers to also further work on boosting our stacks so that we can work towards that next Shadow of the Moon Plus. So here we have a whole bunch of cards on hand. We can play this card for free, giving us the upgrade. Can get the Will-O-Wisp for the next attack card used. So the importance here is if I use this card on the enemy, it is not going to increase because, as mentioned, it is a bind card. Bind cards do not work with cursed jackets. But if I increase the amount of Will-O-Wisp gained of the next attack card used, that would, for example, work. So if I play Tsukuyomi now and then use this attack card, you see we still get stacks even though it's a bind card, but we only get the stacks from the Tsukuyomi card, giving us again the access to another Shadow of the Moon card right here. And then we can just finish off this boss for good. So before we take a deep dive into Chizuru, how good is she? What do I think of her after testing her for 9 hours, and should you summon for her? First off, Chizuru is by no means a must pull. You don't have to pull her if you don't get her, your account isn't bricked, and also there's no problem having her go into the standard pool and pulling her as a 50-50 later down the line or from the standard banner itself. She is a standard unit. Then again, also if you do pull for Chizuru, you're not going to get a piece of trash and she's not going to be useless and collecting dust in your account. Something along the lines of, if I were to start a new account right now and my first 5-star to be pulled was a Chizuru, I would actually be very happy about that. So what you can expect from Chizuru is she either can be your main DPS depending on how you build her, can even have infinite scaling upon you just stacking a bunch of these cards, as we'll talk about in a bit more detail. But she can also be a real blessing to have in a chaos run, due to her kind of feeling like a Mika in a way more offensive manner. You do have that healing if you stack Shadow of the Moon high enough, and then you also have the healing to help you survive throughout the chaos run. Yeah, so, and then you also get the AP, right? Like, yeah, sure, there's the card that like kind of binds your hands and cuts off your AP, but in exchange, you get a damage boost for your cards, while also getting various AP reduction effects, meaning that you most likely always start your turn at either 4 or 5 AP regardless, which is what you can kind of expect to get out of a Mika in like one turn. So that's kind of the way you can see her. And also something you might or might not have considered is unique cards on her. She has a whole bunch of them. First off, every single one of her Bound at Dusk cards are unique, meaning they can't be copy options. And then, for example, not right here, in the Oni Hunt, you have yourself a unique card that you can pick, meaning you can help deck build more specifically for other cards and increase those odds. And you also have a Tsukuyomi right here, meaning you can go up to 3 unique cards with the right Epiphanies, which can again be another plus point in bringing her into a chaos. So between her being a main DPS or a sub DPS, I would kind of classify her as either. But overall, it depends on who you run her with, right? There's just characters that are going to a degree, outshine her, so long as you don't pay attention to how much damage you actually gain from her cards, how much damage you actually gain from those Shadow of Moons being used. So I would kind of take the same wording the devs did and call her a synergy DPS, in her being somewhere between a support, a DPS, and a main DPS, depending on how you kind of arrange the pieces and the way you play around with her. So that is my thoughts on Chizuru. Let's go into the kit. Alright, so now that we're all familiar with Chizuru's base mechanics, let's talk about her cards and which cards you should be looking for, and then we'll go partners, gear, and all those things. Don't you be worried about it. So let's start off with the Karmic Flames, and the Karmic Flames itself at base is going to give you your damage, your debuff, and then an extra hit if you get it for the next time around, whereas the leftmost one is just a straight up damage upgrade, which is okay. This is by far my favorite, because if you cut yourself off from further AP generation, drawing into the Karmic Flames turns this into an AP neutral card, meaning you can pretty much play this for 0, get the extra damage hit, get 1 icon, and then reduce the cost of the next card of this unit used. Pretty much just allowing you to play more cards. So I really like the decrease cost. Here we have a really single target focused damage version of it, and that it has 205% damage at base when you use it and apply a Cursed Shackle, but the next time this card comes around, the damage gets multiplied by 100%, meaning the card all of a sudden does 410% damage. Which is almost, it's obviously more than the 171 times 2, but also the moment you add damage bonuses on, they're going to be twice as effective on Karmic Flames, the 2-hitter versus the 0-hitter, and then we have ourselves Karmic Flames at 2 cost. What this does, it has initiation, all of them do, and you apply the Cursed Shackles, but you also create a Shadow of the Moon. This Shadow of the Moon is going to fuse with any Shadow of the Moons that are available, so the way you read this, or the way you treat this, is that you pretty much get 5 Will-O-Wisps. You get 5 Will-O-Wisps, 5 of that unique resource, allowing you to gain an additional Shadow of the Moon. And then here you have a initiation/exhaust card that when you play this card, you play the Cursed Shackles, but when you then beat the target that has it, you recreate this card in your hand, allowing you to again play this card then on another target. This is mainly used if you're facing, for example, hyperspace base, and then you need to like really work through multiple targets, or if there's not one like chunky big boss. The moment you're facing anything more than one target, this can be quite useful, and it can also help if, for example, already looking a bit into the future, you still somehow want to use the Exhaust Void set, or a exhaust related partner like Eloise. So my favorites here are the cost reduction by 1 as well as the create a shadow of the moon, but the 2-hitter is also pretty standard and pretty damn good. But honestly, all of her Karmic Flames are quite sweet and they give you the important debuff. You can't really go wrong with them, but also Karmic Flames is not one of your copy targets because you can never have multiple stacks of the Cursed Jackal buff. It is also only going to cap at 1, and then if you also apply to a different target, you can't have it like an AoE. It's also then going to like delete itself, so pretty much treat it as a unique debuff. Now we have Tsukuyomi, or Tsukuyomi, I hope I am not butchering it too bad, and what it says is that you get the Will-O-Wisp for the next attack card of this unit use. The important part is currently, as of the time of this recording, it also works with other units' cards being played. That seems to be unintentional. It's mentioned in a, yeah, you could say known issue fix patch note, so we'll have to see what they do. Me personally, I would wish they keep it like this because it's not that bad to be able to combine her with a multi-hitter from a with another different multi-hitter, so you can get more of them, but overall you'll be able to make do even with just for her. So this is the base. And then we have a straight up upgrade to 3, meaning if, for example, you have yourself a 5-hitter, that 5-hitter is going to hit the Cursed Jackals, giving you 5 Will-O-Wisps, and then you're going to get 3 for each hit, meaning that you're going to get another 15. So overall, you're going to get yourself 4 Shadow of the Moon cards, meaning that if, for example, you have it at bind 1, it instantly jumps to bind 5. If you don't have any, it instantly jumps to bind 4. So that is one of the ways you can think about it. At the end of the day, it's just extra Will-O-Wisp per hit. It is a pretty damn good upgrade. Now, then here we have the ability to add that 1 additional hit, but in exchange you only get 1 Will-O-Wisp per hit rather than the 2 or the 3 versions. So if, for example, you have, let's say, what would be a good example? Let's say you have the monster card. Let's say you have the monster card Ecstasy of Violence. Now all of a sudden this is going to go from a 4 to a 5-hitter, but in exchange you're only going to get 5 Will-O-Wisps rather than the 8 that you would have gotten if you played it with the 2 version, but you are also getting more damage out of this. And then what you also need to keep in mind, you do get that additional hit for hitting the target with Cursed Jackals, so technically it's 6 versus 8. So then here, this is at the moment by far her strongest Tsukuyomi, and the reason for this is because this infinitely stacks. So if you get multiple copies of these, you can play out all those copies and it's going to stack and stack and stack and stack. And if you then, for example, have a Shadow of the Moon at 5 stacks, this would be for me a 193% base. And the more times you play out this card without playing the Shadow of the Moon card, the higher the hits. Going up to, for example, what somebody did is 156 hits of, let's say, 200% damage. And then all of a sudden we're looking at 30,000%, which is obviously quite a lot. But do keep in mind, this takes turns to set up. But the more Tsukuyomis you have, the more you can draw into, the more you play out each turn, the faster and faster you stack this. And yeah, but important, you're not going to get any of the unique resource back from her, so long as you don't have another Tsukuyomi to then apply to your bind card before you play it. So this is by far the one with, I guess you could say, the most potential. Then here, this is pretty straightforward. However many attack cards of Chizuru you have in hand, that many Will-O-Wisps you get. And then the latest here is unique and it's a lead card, meaning that it has a 50% chance to reduce its cost. When an attack card of this unit is used, you get 2 Will-O-Wisps, meaning that the more attack cards of Chizuru you use, the more of these you gain. So my favorites out of these are the 3 per hit, because you have some really nice multi-hitters in Chizuru's kit. The add 2 hits for those clip potential big hits. The 1 hit can come in quite nice as well. And then probably the upgrade card somewhere in the middle, because for the upgrade card, you kind of need to prepare a little with a different card. But when it comes to copy targets, the Tsukuyomi card itself is one of your main copies. It has the most potential, it can do the most shenanigans, it is the most important for you to keep your stack generation the highest. So this is your first priority when it comes to duplicating a card. And then we have ourselves Bound at Dusk. So Bounded Dusk, let's speedrun it. The first version, instead of 1 card, reduces the cost of 2 cards by 1, meaning that while you're barred from HP, you're from AP gaining, you at least reduce the cost of 2, overall giving you 5 AP to play 1 turn. This is by far her best one, her most reliable one, and it's going to help you out the most. And this is also kind of the way why you could, to a degree, treat her as like a sub-DPS Mika, or if a Mika actually dealt damage, in that you are guaranteed to get a 2 AP plus every single turn from the turn after you play it out. Then here, this one, increases the or decreases the card of the next cost, the cost of the next card used by 1, depending on if you've used a Shadow of the Moon. The only issue here is, do you have enough Shadow of the Moon generation to generate 1 Shadow of the Moon to at least equal the base version, 2 to overtake the base version, and 3 to make it the best card in the game, right? If you are able to play 3 Shadow of the Moon pluses in a turn, then this is by far the best upgrade, but this only becomes really approachable once you kind of get either like a really good build setup together, or you get that E2 as we go about later. Then this one is really damn strong. The only issue with this is it is random. Meaning if, for example, you're playing somebody like a Rin, there could be an attack card used from somebody else that breaks the stance, and then a Rin attack card used, or a Rin attack card without a stance. Depending on how important it is for you personally and your run to play cards in order, that is how important it is to have this card or not. This card itself can give you a massive amount of AP, so just think about, for example, auto playing a card at 2 or 3 cost. That is going to be quite a lot of gain, quite a lot of potential AP that you don't have to spend yourself, but it is all based on how fragile is your turn, how important is turn order from turn 2 onwards, because you obviously play this turn 1 and then it activates turn 2. Then deactivate the lead cards, only really useful if you either get a bunch of lead cards from the shop, from the seasonal shop, like the draw 1 after play 4, or the cost reduction after having 6 cards, or if you play her with a character that has a bunch of lead cards. But also, the moment you don't draw into any lead cards, this becomes useless. So this is like her hardest to use / her most useless item, or your most useless card, I guess. And then here we have the Bound at Dusk, decreased cost of the card with the highest cost by 2, meaning that if you have a bunch of 2 cost cards or a bunch of high cost cards that you want to reduce in cost, this comes in clutch. Though in general it is better to reduce 2 different card costs by 1, instead of reducing just 1 card by 2, because if, for example, this hits a card that costs 1 because it's your highest card, you're going to lose yourself that 1 AP. So the order here goes, this is first, this is second, this is third, or second or first, depending on your epiphany, your ego manifestations, and then it would be the 2 cost card and then the lead related one. It is unique, so you're unable to clone it, and also, honestly, at least doing a chaos run at minimum, it is good enough that you shouldn't think about removing it. We still have to see what it means for like non-chaos related runs in the future. So now we have ourselves Oni Hunt, my favorite card just from design. Also one of my favorite cards to just play because it's just damn satisfying. And that is, it is at base a 3-hitter, and it increases the damage amount of the next bind card used by plus 30%, so it's like your own damage bonus. And this can also stack with itself. So if you, for example, play 2 Oni Hunts, all of a sudden your next bind card gets 2 times 30, so plus 60%. So the versions here, you have the Oni Hunt at 4 cost, which interacts with the how many hits equals how many resources do you gain. The more hits you have, the better, as well as also with the debuff itself. So this one, even while it has a lower multiplier, you'll still be able to take advantage with like additive damage boni and damage boni for low multiplier cards. This one, instead of being a multi-hitter, again sacrifices it all for 1 big hit that also benefits quite a lot from multiplicative damage bonuses, while also giving the biggest boost possible to the next bind card used. And then here you have a 3-hitter, but it gains haste, and when there are no other attack cards in hand, you add 2 hits, making this potentially the highest hit, but with the big caveat that you lose the boosting effect for the next bind card used, which can actually come in a major way for you to gain a big amount of damage. Now this card is going to be a little bit confusing, a little over the top, but what it does is you play it out. The card itself does not attack, but you do gain yourself 2 Moon Slashes. The thing with these Moon Slashes is they will be reduced to 0 cost, and gain exhaust, meaning that when you play them, they obviously get exhausted. Now, what would be the point of this? Isn't this only like 61 damage times 4? Again, we are missing that like damage amount to the next bind card used. How good could it be? That comes in a more specific way if you once again remember this upgrade card exists, which says per attack card used, you gain 2 Will-O-Wisp, meaning that by playing this card out, by playing out the Oni Hunt right here, not only do you gain 4 Will-O-Wisp from the cursed shackles from the hits themselves, but also an additional 4 for the fact that you've played out 2 attack cards. So yeah, this one, honestly, we'll have to see a bit in the future, and then we just have a straight up upgrade, which just says unique, plus 40% damage amount to Shadow of the Moon plus, and it guarantees you a 3 Will-O-Wisp gain per turn. Personal favorites are the 4-hitter with the 40% bonus, then technically the 60% damage bonus, especially if you want to play like this stacking hit shenanigan, and then after that, it's somewhere in between this one, which could be kind of hard to use if you don't have any attack cards, and the Oni Hunt itself to create your cards, whereas this one's just like a solid, you can just pick it up whenever you get the option and you don't really know what to pick, because you get a permanent damage increase and you also get some decent resource regeneration. Just keep in mind, for example, this card itself, it only gives you 3, whereas for example here you get at minimum 4, plus an additional whatever you get from a Tsukiyomi card. So yeah, but this is by far my favorite version of Oni Hunt. And also, Oni Hunt is your second copy target. If you can only copy specific cards, then you want to copy Tsukiyomi first, because it has the most potential, it has the best interactions, and then Oni Hunt after, as an Oni Hunt being your best damage card, but also your enabler for Tsukiyomi to really start shining, with then again still the skill card coming out ahead, and there not really being a point to you triggering Karmic Flames, and that the debuff is only 1 stack and it is initiation anyway. So that is everything you need to know about Chizuru. I guess we also have ourselves the ultimate. It's 250% damage plus 50% damage amount for each Shadow of the Moon created, up to 10, so 750% single target damage. Good. Nice, we have it out of the way. Let's talk about Chizuru partners. And something that might or might not surprise you, depending on how much you know about it, is the best, the most obtainable partner for Chizuru is actually Zerterra. And the reason why it's Zerterra is because Zerterra gives you a 16% attack increase, meaning whatever attack value you have gets multiplied by 16%, and you also get yourself a 8% max health heal at the end of a battle when you leave the battle with less than 100% health. Ignore the ego skill, it can save you in a pinch, but it's not that important. Now, the reason why Zerterra is even that good is because Eloise is that much harder to use with her. So let's find ourselves our 4-copy Eloise. So Eloise gives a combatant's attack card damage increases by 20%. Seems pretty good, seems pretty straightforward, should be quite nice, right? Only issue is that most of her hits are in the lower than 100% category, meaning that, for example, the 20% damage bonus would only add around 11.4% to the Oni Hunt, which then would lose out against just a overall raw 16% attack increase. Same is true for a Shadow of the Moon or a not as upgraded Shadow of the Moon. Plus, you can kind of get above that 100% threshold once you get a bit more into potential and the like. But overall, the returns on this one by 20% multiplier aren't as great as you would like it to be, unless you, for example, pick the 205% max hit with the multiplier, as well as also maybe here the 205% with the additional multiplier. And the reason why we even talk about this is because of the fact that, for the most part, unless you go out of your way to do so, Louise's second part of her partner skill is pretty much useless for her. And that is the first time the assigned combatant either exhausts a card or gains a status ailment card, increases damage amount of attack cards by a further 24%. Chizuru does not gain any status ailment cards, she just doesn't do it. She doesn't do it, nor does she actually actively exhaust cards, unless, as we briefly mentioned it, you either go for this one exhaust upgrade right here, or potentially the Oni Hunt exhaust right here, where, I mean, you know the reasons why. the only other way for you to get these exhausts would be to actively include neutral cards, but then the moment you don't pull these neutral cards during your turn is just overall just going to end up dealing less damage. Meaning that for the most part, getting Eloise to work with her is a lot more wonky than you would expect it from the only available 4-star, and that's why Zetera is even in the conversation. So now that we have Zetera out of the way, let's speed run fire the rest of the order, and that is going to be right here. We have ourselves Briar. So if you have Kayron's exclusive partner, Briar would, it pretty much in order goes dedicated partner, 3-star partner, then it goes Antea, Briar, and then you have yourself Eloise at the very bottom. Once again, let's have a look at the reasoning, and that is you can get a up to 30% multiplier when you create a card, which you can at least do by creating shadow moons that then fuse into each other. But then again, you cannot create a status ailment card, meaning this is kind of useless, nor can you use the ego skill. So the ego skill is kind of useless, which is the reason why then Antea, the Battle Pass partner, is above Briar, and that is you get the 8% damage increase, you get the plus 8% when you create a card for the first time, which you at least do, and you can also at least use the ego skill in the 180% damage one vulnerable, which is why she has her place. And then as a final note, how does the exclusive partner compare? Is it the best under the sun? Is it what you really should be aiming for? And the answer is not quite. So what you get on level 1 or upon 1 copy, which is the most you can really expect from anyone, is you gain an 8% attack increase, which you notice is 8% lower than what the 3-star partner gives themselves. And then every time the combatants cards stack, meaning that every time you go from bind 1 to bind 2 to bind 3, you get an attack increase by plus 5%, but this is, I think, a mistranslation. As we had it in the English stream, it actually said plus 5%, so additive. What you need to take away from this here is the moment you stack 3 cards, you'll have plus 15% damage for the whole duration of the fight, and this 8% with the plus 15% pretty much balances out with what you're getting from a Zetera with the 16% attack increase. It pretty much ends up being a similar shenanigan. And then we have this. Every time you play an attack card of this combatant that then does a 3-hitter, also applies 30 fixed damage. The best example I can give you is I play out a Moon Shadow, it does 3 hits, 674, 974, 674, and then a 4th hit, and that 4th hit crits and does 80 damage. That is what this does. I'm not quite sure why this is a thing, nor why the trigger condition is the way it is. This is nothing. Like, this is barely anything. Maybe you can treat it as an extra hit, but I don't even think this fixed hit counts as an additional hit to get a stack, because that I would have noticed. So this is barely irrelevant, right? So like this part pretty much equivalates to its, or slightly better than the 3-star partner, and the only reason why she's better is then this ego skill where you get 200% damage to all enemies, and the buff called Fierce Winds, which increases the damage of your attack cards for 1 turn by plus 50%, meaning for example a 133% damage bonus goes to 183. So that is partners. So now onto memory fragments. This is the baseline that we want to be working with, and that is a 2-set attack with a 2-set crit damage. And the following main stats: in you get yourself attack percent, then you get yourself void damage, and you get yourself crit chance. That is what you'll be looking for. And the substats that are most important are crit chance substats, then crit damage, then attack flat, and then attack percent. Those are the magic 4 that you are looking for. Now, how do you further improve upon this baseline? Number 1, if you run it together with a Tresor, we'll talk about teams in a second. If you run it together with a Tresor, then you can obviously add in an agony set, or if for example you have like a divine epiphany that adds agony on any of your characters, then you can add the agony 2-piece. But you can also try and work in the I don't even know if I have a piece of this lying around. I might just the basic set, right? You know what I'm talking about. You can then try and wind in the increases the damage, shield, and healing of basic cards by 20% if you're looking for that perfect 2-piece. So that is Chizuru at the baseline. Now let's talk about the 4-piece sets and which one of those are good and which one of those aren't as great. So first off, do not get tricked by the plus 35% damage of 1-cost cards. The reason why I'm saying do not get tricked by it, even though Oni Hunt is a 1-cost card, Shadow of the Moon is a 1-cost card, and Karmic Flames is a 1-cost card, what could be the problem here? Do not forget about Bound at Dusk. Bound at Dusk is going to reduce the cost of cards in your hand, meaning it can also, and will also, reduce the cost of your Oni Hunts, your Shadow of the Moons, or your Karmic Flames, down away from 1 and down to 0, meaning that now all of a sudden this set isn't active anymore. So long as you don't go out of your way to make sure you don't have the cost reduction effect, this set doesn't actually work, because at sometimes your costs will be 0 and then maybe they'll be 1. So be careful of that. Bringing us to then the 4-piece sets. So for example, this Void set should at least work on her, and that is when a card is exhausted, increase damage of Void cards by 20%, meaning that if you also exhaust a card of somebody else, or exhaust yourself a gear bag, a reorganize, and cards like that, then you can still get the benefit from the Void set, and the Void 4-piece can be an option. But then we also have ourselves something new, something shiny, something interesting, and that is this very new gear dungeon called Flames and the Orb. And this should by all means at the moment be considered her best in slot set, and that is whenever you hit 2 times with a single attack card, you get plus 10% damage to Void cards for 1 turn. Meaning if you use 2 attack cards that double hit, you have yourself the 20% damage bonus. It's also additive rather than multiplicative, so it works with lower multipliers, and then you can you can use that to give yourself the biggest bonus from Chizuru. But it is very important for you to at least make sure you have similar, if not better, subset on that 4-piece to make up for kind of like losing that 2-piece. And then the 2-piece I would run with her would be preferably crit damage if possible, because it just yields a bigger damage increase. But if that isn't possible, then I would swap over to just a standard 12% attack set. So before we move on into the ego manifestations, let's talk about teams. And let me kind of explain what you're even looking at here. So at the top, you have my favorite team that I found. I played Chizuru for 9 hours. I played her multiple times with multiple different teams and multiple different chaos scenarios. And by far the team that felt the most comfortable to me was Luke, Chizuru, Ray. And the reason for Ray is that Ray doesn't give any AP. So there's no, like you could say, chance for her to fuck it up. And she can also give you the morale and the single target or at like the additive damage increases, working really well with multi-hitters. And then kind of like as that secret sauce, we have Luke. Now the reason why Luke works so well is because Luke inherently in his kit already has multi-hitters. So for example, shooting a rapid fire against a target that has the debuff already gives you 2 stacks for your Shadow of the Moon, then creates 2 bullet cards that you can use overall, giving you 4 stacks. Or even if you just get the 3 fire epiphany, that's already a full stack of a Shadow of the Moon just by using a rapid fire. You can then also, for example, do the same by using a stealth reload to just give you more bullets, to then use those bullets to create this multi-hit effect. And then on top of that, you also have yourself the Dance of the Demon, which does damage based on either the bullets or the attack cards used depending on the epiphany. And what this can lead to is then you again getting a bunch of like the stacks, and you can also combine that potentially, at least at the moment, with the glitch card. But no, overall, realistically, you can again combine that with cursed jackets. And if an enemy has cursed jackets and you hit them 17 times with a Luke, Dance of the Demon, that is 17 stacks, meaning 3 Shadows of the Moon. So for example, you could play a Shadow of the Moon, play the Luke card, get another Shadow of the Moon plus, and then play it again. While also this one is pretty damn reliable in Chaos, in that it's a base 6 hitter and also becomes very cost effective so long as you just use 3 bullet cards, meaning you use 3 bullet cards, then use this 9 hitter at 0 cost, and you can get yourself more stacks. So this is the team I found the most reliable in Chaos, the most chill, and also the one that like got the most out of Chizuru. And then we have kind of like your replacements that you can use if you either don't want to use Luke or don't have Luke. Important, you do not need Luke E2 for this. You can then use a Tressa. Tressa is in a similar vein, just the ability to either use her legendary card for the triple hitter, or get yourself the 0-cost daggers to just hit the target with, while also applying Agony to potentially boost the 2 set piece. Then you have yourself Mei Lin. Mei Lin, again, kind of same shenanigan. You can use the unity of attack and defense to get yourself a bunch of attack cards, play out these attack cards, hit the enemy, get a bunch of stacks, get Shadow of the Moon stacks, potentially synergize into the multi-hit passion card based on passion cards used, or just with the upgrade for the next passion card hitting multiple times to then again give you more resources, give you more Shadow of the Moons. You get the deal. Rin, bang on again, same thing. You're going to go in, Rin is going to go in, Rin is going to do a bit of ka-ching. The only thing again you need to pay attention to is that Chizuru herself obviously has attack cards, which means that you'll have to manage your Rin stance, but it is absolutely possible to run it in Chaos. I ran it through Chaos. I didn't really run into too many issues. I was able to beat the boss. I was even able to beat the hidden boss at like 40,000 HP or whatever. So Rin is also a possible solution. And then you can also get yourself Barrel. Now the thought process behind Barrel is not only do you provide card draw and also very cheap cards that can reduce their cost, as well as the potential to go for multi-hits with opening found. The keyword here is that this cost reduction is until used the same way that this is, meaning that you will be able to reduce the cost of her retain cards and then still retain them into the next turn with the reduced cost to then use them whenever you desire while reaping the benefits of the multi-draw card. Then obviously we have Chizuru in the middle. Chizuru does Chizuru things. Now why is Renoa crossed out? The reason for that is Renoa discarding does not count for her debuff. So the Cursed Jackets only get triggered. Cursed Jackets only get triggered by Renoa actually playing the card rather than you discarding the Renoa bullets. That does not trigger Cursed Jackets, making the interactions between the two very, very limited, besides maybe a draw support Renoa, but at this point you could just play a Barrel Ray or somebody else. Bringing us to then this last section here. So first off, obviously there's no problem with you playing Mika, and if you want to be a little silly one, you can also just delete our inhibition unique card right here so that you never run into this anti-AP problem. But then also keep in mind you're losing out on 1 extra hit to Shadow of the Moons. And then if you're not running Mika, you have kind of like these 3 options. Ray I found the most solid in that the reason why we can solo heal here is because our Shadow of the Moon Plus Shadow of the Moon Plus also gives us a HP recovery, which means Ray is not the only healer on the field anymore. Ray then with starting from E2 able to also heal herself by using an attack card. And then we have ourselves Nia and Cassius. Cassius is specifically better outside of the Void in, for example, a deck that looks something like this, where you can play out this Devil Dice 4 times. Because you play it out 4 times, you get yourself 4 resources, you get yourself also 4 draws, and due to the cost reductions and such, you can also try and make this unit work with the 000 card. Technically you could try 111 then again, depending on the cost. But what can also work quite well is the full house, in that you just play a Cassius, a, let's say, Luke, and a Chizuru card, and then you repeat that to just be able to, like, for example, draw more cards. So Cassius is just overall pretty solid, and the way you would regenerate HP on a Cassius is by getting the E2 and then making sure you heal yourself by drawing with an ability on Cassius. So that's why Cassius is there. And then for Nia, it mainly depends. It's just a good way to, again, also activate cards from the top of the deck. Chizuru doesn't really mind if you activate her cards. It's not like Yuki, where you need to draw them first and then activate them. So you can kind of play into this, play out your deck, or maybe even discard some Chizuru cards to get some extra attacks in, rather than having to rely on anything more specific. So that's kind of like the thought process behind, like, this first, you could say, core team of Chizuru. Alright, now Chizuru Epiphanies. Overall, again, keep in mind it is always better to get a new unit than it is to get a copy of a unit you already have. You just get more value for your time, for your effort, for your gameplay, for your fun in having more units than having multiple units upgraded. But what are the values of these upgrade cards and how good are they? So overall, the E1 is a very solid damage boost in that it increases the damage of Shadow of the Moon by 20%, meaning that at 1 hit, 20, 2 hits, 40, 3 hits, a extra 60% damage added. Pretty straightforward. And then it also increases the recovery by giving you an 8% heal. Can also hit quite hard if you get that super mega multi ultra hit. But now we come to potentially her most important awakening in terms of changing her gameplay style, and that is when a Shadow of the Moon plus is used, meaning bind 3 or above, you get yourself another Shadow of the Moon. What that means is you can go to 3 stacks, play it out, get one that's already on 1 stacks, boost it by 2, so from bind 1 to bind 3, then use it again, get a bind 1, so it just allows you to cycle Shadow of the Moon pluses more, and as we already talked about, then be able to trigger the effect of Shadow of the Moon reducing the cost of your cards. Then we have the E3, which is completely irrelevant, the extra AoE damage, extra single target damage from 750 to 900%, you barely notice it. And if you really are that kind of guy that likes her that much, these are pretty darn solid. And what they do is every time you create a Shadow of the Moon, so every 5 stacks, you get a permanent fight long damage bonus of 10%. And then the moment you do it 3 times, you have a fight long 30% bonus for all multi-hits, for all hits, for everything regardless. And then as a final upgrade here, you get the, when Lunar Shadow stacks to 3, you get increasing hit count of Shadow of the Moon by 1, meaning that now you know, I could have sworn there was also an increase to her damage to 15%. But maybe I'm misremembering. But overall, you'll then at 3 stacks be able to add an additional hit to your Shadow of the Moon, overall increasing the damage by, unless you use the Special Epiphany, by 25%. So, you don't need the E1, you don't need the E4, you don't need the E6. The E2 is by far the most game-changing, but you don't need it. There is nothing that this unlocks that you can't get done with a normal Chizuru. So this is pretty much the end of it if you want to watch it, because everybody still, I guess, likes to see some gameplay, or maybe wants to just get a bit of an idea of how it looks if you have yourself a build Chizuru in just raw damage numbers. We'll be going into the family head at full difficulty, meaning the full damage reduction is applied, and it's just going to be Chizuru herself going into the fight. I don't expect this fight for us to be a winning one, nor do I expect anything too crazy from her, but we'll just be going in here so you kind of like can get a bit of an idea of, yeah, just what it looks like when Chizuru does what she does. So we obviously have our bind at the dusk. We have our 2 hitters, so we can again get our stacks. We can also just start drawing into some cards, get ourselves a bit of morale, and already increase the hit of the next card used by 1, as well as the stacks gained by 1. So once again, with the draw card, we can again start cycling through our deck, further increase the hits of the next attack card used, and then the attack card here is, for example, as you see, going to be giving us quite a lot of Shadow of the Moons. And then we are already on a Shadow Moon plus at 3 stacks, so we could use this right here and then already cycle into the next Shadow of the Moon for later. So we used it right here, then use our Karmic Flames with the dual hit Epiphany to again already move into the next Shadow of the Moon. And for a fact that she is pretty much doing this all by herself, all on her own, you can't really complain too much, can you? So here we can again draw 2. Get ourselves those draws out of the way. As you can see, we have a Forbidden Ecstasy of Violence in here because it just gives you a bunch of, just a bunch of damage. So we can again play our double Tsukuyomi to increase the hits by 2 and then the amount of stacks gained. And then our, extra hit. You see, we get a bunch of hits, we get some upgrades, and then we are already on a Shadow of the Moon again at 4 stacks. So we can use that here once more to get some extra damage. And that is then kind of what you can expect. Keep in mind, there are no extra damage buffs from anybody else coming in. There's no like Ray in the team, which multiplies the damage by another 25%, or any, you could say, similar shenanigans. I mean, we might as well just give ourselves one extra draw here because our hand is looking kind of sad. So again, we get our double hitter, we get our extra haste attack, and then we also get the non-maintenance announcement, which should tell you that this video is somewhat recent. And then here again we can do another triple hitter. And that's just from her herself alone. Again, another turn of 4000 damage. No real setup, nothing crazy required. Again, Forbidden Ecstasy of Violence, we can use into an Oni hunt. And that just ends up being, yeah, quite a lot of hits. And then we can also, again, generate ourselves a Shadow of the Moon, which, as you see right here, is, again, up to a fantastic 4 bind stacks. We could have also played it earlier before playing the Oni hunt to use it at 3 stacks and then use the Oni hunt to already work towards the next one. But yeah, right, we get a extra hits in. Here we could also even increase the hits of the basic, just so we can get some more stacks. And then we again are on our Shadow of the Moon Plus. Can use the Shadow of the Moon Plus again to get ourselves a little bit of extra healing, which is one of the main reasons why we even survived this long. And yeah, this is kind of just a bit of an idea. Just a bit of an idea of what you can do with her. Obviously, I could smack her into a Cassius and Luke team and beat this guy turn 1, but it wouldn't necessarily be her and be more of a Luke plus her showcase with her bit on the side.